This is the plaintiff, Sheila Drabeski. She says she brought her car to the defendant's repair shop to fix her steering. A month later, she had the same problem and brought it back again. That's when he told her he used bogus parts instead of BMW parts. She has to get her car repaired again by an authorized dealer and is suing the defendant for the return of her $2,473.38. This is the defendant, Mark. He says he uses aftermarket parts all the time and usually has no problems. He fixed the woman's steering, and around a week later she started complaining her oil was leaking, and she demanded he fix it for free. Bottom line, this is a 22-year-old car with lots of problems, and the plaintiff thinks he should repair every little thing on her car because he fixed her steering. He's accused of doing a shoddy repair. The defendant has filed a countersuit for $240, the cost of his lawyer.
All parties, please raise your right hand. People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marilyn Leon is now presiding. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay, Ms. Drapeski, you are suing Why Go to the Dealer, owned by Mr. Mark, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you want your money back and then some for rack and pinion replacement that he did on your 98 BMW, which according to you still didn't solve your problem. So tell me what happened.
Okay, well, all the problems began in July of 2019. We noticed that the steering wheel wasn't turning properly. It was very stiff. I normally go to another mechanic, Wellington Auto Services. I called them first, and they said that they were booked, they couldn't take me, and it would be a while. And we're only there for a short time in Florida. Originally, we're from Philadelphia. So we looked
So you travel back and forth?
We travel back and forth, and we were there in July. And whenever we're there, we drive that car, which is a classic. And so...
what kind of car is this?
It's a 1998 BMW 528i, and it's a beautiful car. So anyway, we drive the car because we don't really do much when we're there. So we noticed this problem, never had it before. Take it to Mark, and he tells us, oh, no problem, I could fix it tomorrow. So we said, okay. So we came back in a couple of days. He did the rack and pinion, and we took it away, gave him the money, gave him what he asked for, which was, if I can see it here,
$1,253.28. And
Yes,
then what
correct.
happens? When's the first time you notice a problem?
Well, we were still there, so in the beginning of August, around the middle or beginning of August, same problem comes back. So immediately we call him, we go back in. And
Wait, what was the problem you noticed? What was the problem?
The steering wheel would not turn properly. It was very stiff. When you would try to turn at a corner, you couldn't turn. It was dangerous. Okay. So, we said, the problem hasn't changed. He said, well, bring it in. We bring it in. He said, oh, you need a steering wheel pump. Okay, so now I need a steering wheel pump. All right, so we tell him put it in because we need the car. So I spent another $445 for that. We drive the car off. 5 days later, the car still goes back to the same problem. So we go back 5 days later, and he says, oh, it's faulty. The steering wheel pump is faulty, so we're going to have to do a new steering wheel pump. So now this is the second steering wheel pump I'm getting in. He didn't charge me for it. Okay, he's putting in a new one. Then he said, oh, by the way, that first defective steering wheel pump messed up the rack and pinion that we put in. So we're going to have to replace the rack and pinion. So now I got another steering wheel pump, and I have another rack and pinion that's going in. All
right, but you weren't charged for either of those, right?
I was not charged for either one. So he does the work. We're coming back to Philadelphia, so we can't get it done immediately. We say, well, Mark, we will go and we'll park the car. When we get back, you'll change it. Okay, we agreed to do that. So we go back. We left in October. and we come back in December. He did the repair on December 19th.
All right, Ms. Drapesky, in December 9th,
Yes.
he fixes the car again in December.
7/19,
And
yes.
And you drive it away and you turn and everything's fine,
Yes,
because
it's
otherwise you bring it
okay.
right back. And then when
Right.
does it go bad again?
It goes bad December 24th, Christmas Eve, when we try to go
Okay,
off
so at
into
some
the
point
car.
in January, you tell him, I want my money back, correct?
No, in January 17th, we're talking to his mechanic, and he says to us, well, I've told Mark many times that he should have never used knockoff parts. He should use BMW parts, because this is a BMW. You don't use these kind of parts. That's why. This is what his mechanic says. So,
Do you have an affidavit
does
from
the
his
flush.
mechanic?
no, I don't have anything from his mechanic. I don't even know his name. So we go into the office to get an invoice from Mark, and I say to him, Mark, this is what your mechanic says. He said, yeah, well, that's probably true, but I didn't use BMW parts because I figured you probably wouldn't have wanted to pay for it. You wouldn't have wanted to pay the cost of BMW parts. And I say to him, well, you don't even know me. How would you know what I would want
Right.
to pay? I paid you what you
Right.
asked for this.
Right.
I didn't even know you used knockoff parts. I'm assuming.
Now, when you say
doing the
knockoff
job.
parts, give me a moment, Mr. Pesky, Mr. Mark. When she talks about knockoff parts, what is she talking about?
I don't know what she's talking about. I inform all my customers, and by the way, hello, Your Honor. I inform all my customers that I use aftermarket parts, and if the part is an option, then I would give them the factory part, but I inform them that we always put aftermarket parts on. And the aftermarket parts usually work on the car, no problem.
Do you have any paperwork that would reflect what you're saying? That says we're using
Not in the paperwork, but I told her that we're using aftermarket parts in the beginning.
Oh, watch this. Did he tell you he was using aftermarket parts in the beginning?
I have no idea
Right.
what
See-
that means.
Here's the thing. You should always put that in the paperwork, because I know that usually there's not a problem. A lot of people use aftermarket parts. They're not knockoff. They're not useless. But on a BMW, I don't know that it was ever wise to use our aftermarket parts. So did your employee, did she tell you, hey, your employee just told me there's no way this is going to work with aftermarket? Did she actually complain to you and say that to you?
No, I don't remember that at all, Your Honor. What happened was she called me up. She wanted her car fixed. I gave her a price on fixing the power steering pump.
Okay, we don't have to go that far back. Okay, but hold on for me, because we don't have to go that far back, because there's really no dispute about anything. You acted totally appropriately. You couldn't have been nicer. You keep fixing the car every time she comes. You're honoring the warranty. Here's the problem, though. She doesn't want to visit you. You ain't her boyfriend. She doesn't want to see you all the time. She wants to be one and done. And so, as it turns out, it looks like maybe the aftermarket parts aren't working on the BMW.
Like I was trying to say is, when she brought the car to me the first time, I put an aftermarket part in. And then we flushed it out and we put a power steering pump on. Then she said she couldn't come back until after November because I said I'd replace the rack and pinion because she was away. And I said, okay, when you come back, we're on the phone with the parts guy. And she demanded to speak to my parts guy. My parts guy said, don't worry, we'll replace the rack and pinion. I replaced the rack and pinion again, and then I flushed it again. Okay? I did everything that I could. I told her that I said, listen, I said, obviously, after flushing it, two rack and pinions and a power steering pump, there's a problem with the car. It must have to have a rack and pinion part. And that's why I got the factory part there. I told the factory part is this much money. I said, the part that you paid for.
When you say factory part, you mean an actual BMW, which is funny because the name of your business is Why Go to the Dealer. That's the actual name of his business, is Why Go to the Dealer. That's who you went to. Why go to the dealer? And then apparently go to the dealer. All right. So, well, actually, you still don't have to go to the dealer. You just got to get the dealer part. But, all right. So then you tell her, all right, I'll replace it, but you got to pay the difference between the aftermarket part and the BMW part, because obviously the BMW part is much more expensive.
Right. And I said,
did you ever tell her I didn't think you'd want to pay the difference?
No, I never told her that. I gave her the option of afterwards, not in the beginning. I told her I'm using an aftermarket part. I didn't give her, she asked as a factory, I said, no, it's aftermarket. And I explained to her the aftermarket parts usually work all the time. 9 out of 10 times, we never have a problem with them whatsoever. not whatsoever. So that's why I buy aftermarket. And the reason why.
Yeah, no, there shouldn't be a problem unless there's a problem. Right. And then now we have a problem. So her feeling is, and I know she's suing you. Let's talk about all the things. Is that a real lobster on your wall?
It's a lobster I caught, yes.
Get out of here. That is a scattywampus.
Yeah, it's 5 pounds. Yeah, I love diving.
Wow. Did you, wait, you ate it, right? You ate the innards.
Yeah, ate them. Yeah, ate the innards.
Okay, because otherwise, all right. Okay, let me ask you, Ms. Drapesky, you're suing for all kinds of stuff. By the way, have you gotten the car fixed? Have you taken it somewhere to get fixed?
Well, pandemic came, and the car is sitting in the garage. So we haven't really gone back to do anything yet. I came down there. Are you spending the pandemic in Florida or in Pennsylvania? No, I'm in Pennsylvania, but I came back to file the second lawsuit. I came down there on purpose because I was so determined to bring him to court. I decided, okay, I lost the first 230, but I'm going back and I'm going to sue the business. I just have to, no matter. Okay, so let's back up a second and explain what you're talking about. The next thing you're suing for is $230.60 in a filing fee because you filed how, online? Well, what I did is I filed in person, but all the paperwork. Because you were here still. And then you sued him personally instead of suing the business. Correct. Okay, and then you go to court, you hire a lawyer, which is the subject of your counterclaim. Well, and the lawyer charges you $240 to move to dismiss it. Yeah, go ahead.
I contacted my lawyer and I said, I called her up and I said, you can't sue me personally. You have to sue the corporation because I'm protected in Florida. I mean, that's a corporation. And my lawyer then contacted the judge and asked the judge, why are they suing Mr. Mark from Why You're the Dealer? And then the judge sent out a letter asking Ms. Pensky about why you're suing Mark. Well, she never responded. So the judge dismissed the case without prejudice against me. Okay, now the way that works, because it makes it sound as though your lawyer's talking to the judge over lunch. That's not how your lawyer files a motion to dismiss saying you can't sue him personally, which you can't because you didn't do business with him personally. You did it with the corporation. He's protected. That's how corporations work. You filed the wrong way. And so now you and that judge dismisses your suit and you are suing him for the $230 for the suit that you filed wrong? Mm-hmm. Well, yes. Now, how do you figure? On what planet would that be appropriate? Well, all right. There's a catch to this. The judge and $104 to fly back to file it, right? Yes. Right. And he's supposed to pay that. That's not happening. So really, let's talk about the real thing. The real thing here is that, according to you, you still have a problem. Have you taken it to be fixed anywhere else? No, but I contacted my original service provider, which is Wellington, and asked them what would it cost at this point in time to fix my car. Now, ironically, I said, well, you know, I have a rack and pinion that Mark put in there. It's not the original that I normally had. He said, well, where do you get that from? Because I've searched everywhere for every vendor and I can't find any rack and pinions. So we're going to have to rebuild the rack and pinion that's in there. That's why the price is different from what maybe Mark paid. It's like $800 difference that I'm going to have to pay to get this thing rebuilt. Mark, how much was it that you told her she would have to pay in order for you to purchase the BMW part? How much more was it? I believe you have the receipt from BMW that says how much the factory rack and pinion there is. So Mark, you then tell her it'll be another $500. She doesn't like it, but you would have resolved it for $500. What I told her was, she said she wanted all her money back, right? And I said, well, the factory rack and pinion is $1,700 and change, and you have the paperwork from BMW. And so I told her, well, subtract the $500 from what you paid, or subtract $500 change, from the $1,700 and change, and then I'll eat the labor, and you got to pay the difference for the factory rack and pinion. Now, the funny part is she
so
said
it would
that
have been a difference between the part that cost $500 and the part, so it would be an additional $1,200.
Yeah, she would have to pay $1,200 because she did pay for the $500 for the rack and pinion, and it's not her fault that the rack and pinions didn't work to tube. So I'm a fair guy.
Welcome back to the People's Court. I'm Harvey Levin. The plaintiff is claiming that she now has to take her car to an authorized BMW dealer because the defendant screwed her car up so badly. But the defendant says that he's not going to fix every little thing in the plaintiff's car when something goes wrong because, for crying out loud, the car is 22 years old. Let's go back into the courtroom.
I do not agree with you, Mr. Pesky, that he has to pay for BMW parts. It obviously costs a lot more to have dealer parts. I need you to listen. I need you to listen, though.
Okay.
You know, nowhere does it say they're BMW parts. And the fact is, 80% of these repairs will be with, you know, I'm throwing out the number 80, but a really large majority are going to be aftermarket parts unless you go to the dealer. And you went to a guy whose business is called Why Go to the Dealer? So it's kind of funny, but it's not. The difference that you are going to have to pay to get BMW parts is something that is not, I'm not going to find him responsible for. The work that you did for her for $1,253.28, that was entirely for the rack and pinion, and that's what is a problem. She has had this problem and had to come back to you over and over and over. So here's how I'm going to rule. He does not have to pay for your filing fee for the first case. He does not have to pay for your flight to come down. And he does not have to pay the difference between aftermarket and BMW parts. On your counterclaim against her, you need to go seek your lawyer's fees in that case that got dismissed. And on your lawsuit against him, this repairman told you that for $884.92, he would rework that rack and pinion?
Yes. The full price
because
was
you can't get parts thanks to COVID?
I don't know if it's related to COVID or what is it, but he said they would have to rebuild that rack and pinion that's in my car.
And they gave you the quote of $884.92?
No, they gave me a quote, total quote of $2,000. It's on the Wellington
I got
receipt.
I got it.
Yeah, so that's the cost, and it's an $800 difference between what Mark
I understand what
charged me.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. When you go to get that job done, you have them give you the part. And if you return it to Mr. Mark, then he will return that $500. I am ordering him to return to you now the labor part of that job. The amount you paid him for it was $1,253. Then the part itself is $500, and the rest was what? Labor?
It was labor, and you have fluids. You have labor, fluid, and taxes.
All right. So I'm going to order him to return that portion, which is labor, because it didn't do you any good. That's $753. And if you return that $500 rack and pinion to him, then I'll order him to return the other $500. But if you want to use it, it's not free. So that's my verdict. And I wish you all good luck and nothing on the counterclaim.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, what about my rack and pinion? He's not getting it back.
So the judge decides that the defendant is having to give the plaintiff the labor cost back. That's it. She doesn't get the full $2,400, that's for sure. Let's talk to him, the defendant, Mark. Mark, let me ask you a quick question. One gets the impression sometimes there are some cars that maybe it just pays to use factory parts and not use off-market parts. Would you agree with that or not?
Well, it depends on the year, make, and model and how old the car is because, sometimes it's not available. And her part was available and it still is available. And, I gave her, and I told her it's an aftermarket part in the very beginning. She knew it was an aftermarket part that I was giving on her car. I offered her the $500 back, and the judge feels that I owe labor. I don't know why. It's not my fault the part didn't work.
All right, sir. Well, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Pesky, what are you thinking right now? What are you going to do?
Well,
any idea?
I think there was a disconnect because the judge doesn't understand now. If I give him back the rack and pinion, Where's my original rack and pinion that he took out?
Well, that's the judge's decision here. And if you have a question, obviously call him and ask him. He'll tell you whether he still has it or not. Thank you very much. Okay? And that'll wrap up the case. Let's join the judges for another session of After the Verdict.
These cases that involve mechanical repairs to cars that just don't come out right are like the worst possible cases for judges to sort out.
Yeah.
Because they can be really complicated. They're complicated, they're not easy to resolve, but when both parties are mad at you, like these two are, and unsatisfied, that probably means you got it right.
Well, you know, the thing is, yeah, she doesn't have her old rack and pinion because it was faulty. Everybody agrees that her rack and pinion originally was faulty. There was no question about that. So what's that?
That was no good.
Yes, you don't have that,
We know
but
that
is
no
worth zero because that's why you brought the car in to begin
and now
with.
she has a rack and pinion in the car.
Right. She got back every penny he charged her for the rack and pinion.
Right.
Except for the part. And if she returns it, she'll get that as well.
Exactly.
But if she doesn't return it, then she got the value of having a part, because a part costs money.
Exactly.
And her previous part is worthless. So I didn't think she would be returning that rack and pinion. But then what she got, which is fair, I think, is the rest of the money.
Well, she also initially in another lawsuit tried to file a lawsuit against him personally. And of course, the reality is that case gets dismissed by a Florida judge because corporate identity has meaning and it's important. And the reason people like this mechanic, Mark, who seems like an honest mechanic, the reason they take the risk of opening a small business like that is because corporate identity limits their liability and they're not going to be financially ruined by something that goes wrong.
Right. They won't lose their house and their personal possessions or their car. You know, they're protected.
I don't think she's ever going to be able to sue him personally unless she can
she can never
gross negligence or an intentional tort or something of that nature, right?
Right.
So Rich wants to know this. Hey, Harvey, Judge Millian just recently rendered a $3,000 judgment against a 15-year-old juvenile who was accused of shooting out a car window with a BB gun. What is the youngest age an individual can be found liable in a civil court of law? Wow, that is a good question. I am telling you, we have had people's court cases. I want to say that there was a kid 5 or 6 years old who was found liable. His parent was also found liable for negligent supervision. But typically, a child needs to know right from wrong before they can be personally sued for negligence. And that's one of the reasons why it is incumbent on parents to supervise their children. Because if they don't know right from wrong and they can't be sued, the parent sure can if they're not supervising. When a child knows right from wrong will depend. And that's why judges will ask young kids questions about whether they understand the distinction before they actually get up on the stand. If they don't understand the distinction, they can't go up on the stand, but also they probably can't be sued, but their parents can. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case are inside the courtroom.